Digital journal entry, Abigail Russo. October 14th, 11:47 p.m. I finally finished the Sullivan portfolio analysis. 5 years at this company, and I'm still up close to midnight finalizing reports while Bradley is probably out at a bar celebrating. Early for a promotion he thinks he's going to get. The irony? My numbers show 18% more growth potential than previous projections. Garrett has to notice me now. The interview is tomorrow, and after 5 years of proving myself, my moment has finally arrived. I have to believe that. Boston's financial district at 6:30 a.m. had its own hierarchy. Security guards and cleaning crews were already in place. Baristas were prepping coffee for the incoming wave of executives, and a select minority of professionals were already at their desks, determined to get a head start on a day that hadn't even begun. Abigail Russo, Abby to almost everyone, belonged to that last group. She typed with the precision of a surgeon, finalizing the last details of the presentation she would deliver in her interview with Garrett Woodson at 10 o'clock. The senior manager of financial analysis role had opened up after Philip Norton's sudden move to a competitor, and after 5 years as a senior analyst with consistently exceptional results, Abby knew the promotion was just a formality. Or at least that's what she told herself as she added yet another chart highlighting the growth her analyses had driven in the last quarter. Up early again, Russo? Abby looked over her monitor to see Marcus Kelly holding 2 coffee cups. His smile was warm, genuine, a rare sight on the 35th floor of Pinnacle Investments, where smiles usually served as masks for predatory ambition. Someone's got to do the real work around here, she replied, gratefully accepting the coffee. Bradley sent in his part of the Sullivan analysis at 11 p.m., full of inconsistencies I had to fix before submitting. Marcus sat on the edge of her desk, lowering his voice. And I bet Garrett's going to credit the work to the team, like it was an equal contribution. Story of my life. Abby shrugged, but the gesture didn't hide her frustration. That changes today. This promotion is mine, Marcus. No one else has my numbers, my dedication, or my vision for the department. Marcus nodded, but there was a shadow in his eyes Abby knew all too well. 2 years ago, he'd been passed over for a similar promotion in favor of a white colleague with half his experience. Pinnacle Investments was progressive in its marketing, but its leadership remained an exclusive club of white men from the same 3 elite universities. Ready for the interview? He asked, changing the subject. Born ready. Abby opened a meticulously organized folder. 5 years of top performance reviews, 3 excellence awards, and a detailed plan to increase department efficiency by 22% in the next year. Jesus, you really don't leave anything to chance. I can't. Women in this field don't have that luxury. The truth of that statement hung in the air between them. Of the 17 senior managers at Pinnacle, only 2 were women, both hired externally after investor pressure for more diversity. No woman had ever been promoted internally to that level. Well, if anyone's going to break that pattern, it's you, Abby. Marcus gave her shoulder a quick squeeze before heading off to his own desk. At 9:55, Abby stood outside Garrett's office, folder under her arm, every inch of her appearance carefully considered. The navy blue suit projected professionalism without seeming overly masculine, a balance women in finance had to master or face the consequences. Garrett Woodson was the Boston executive archetype, perfectly trimmed gray hair, tailored suit, and the kind of confidence that comes from never having your competence questioned. His office was a shrine to financial tradition, dark wood, leather-bound books that had probably never been opened, and photos strategically placed with industry power players. Abby, come in. His professional smile didn't quite reach his eyes as he gestured to the chair in front of his imposing desk. Punctual as always. Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Woodson. Abby kept her tone perfectly balanced between respect and confidence. Garrett, please. After 5 years, we can drop the formalities. He flipped through her updated resume without actually reading it. So, you're interested in Philip's position? Yes. I believe my experience and track record with the company make me an ideal candidate for the role. For the next 20 minutes, Abby meticulously presented her case, statistics, achievements, ideas for the department's future. Garrett listened with a neutral expression, occasionally nodding or tossing out shallow questions. Abby's initial confidence began to falter. Something about his body language felt off. He wasn't really evaluating her qualifications, he was just going through the motions. "Your results are truly impressive, Abby," he finally said, leaning back. "You're undoubtedly one of the best analysts we've ever had." The compliment came with a subtext Abby recognized instantly. One of the best analysts. Not a potential manager, not a leader. An analyst. With all due respect, Garrett, I believe I've demonstrated capabilities well beyond analysis. I've led projects, mentored new analysts, developed systems that increased our efficiency by 30%. And we deeply value those contributions. He interrupted with a smile that was meant to be kind, but came off as loaded with condescension. But managing a team is different. It requires a specific skill set, assertiveness when needed, unpopular decisions, constant availability. Qualities I've consistently demonstrated, Abby replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. The Anderson project required exactly that kind of... Abby, Garrett said, cutting her off again. You're an exceptional analyst, but leadership? Positions call for a different profile, more aggressiveness, tough calls, total availability. Frankly, I don't see women thriving in that role. It's better to stick with what you do well. The air seemed to be sucked out of the room. Abby felt her face heat up, but years of meetings in male-dominated rooms had taught her to hide visceral reactions. "Are you telling me that being a woman disqualifies me from this position?" she asked, her voice dangerously calm. Garrett raised his hands defensively. "I never said that. I'm talking about the profile, about compatibility with the demands of the role. It's an observation based on years of experience in the industry. Experience mostly watching men in leadership roles, I imagine." Garrett's smile tightened. "Let's not turn this into a political issue, Abby. It's a business decision. In fact, I've already made my choice." He slid a memo across the table. "Bradley Matthews has shown the kind of initiative and vision we need. His promotion will be announced on Monday. Bradley, 3 years at the company, half of Abby's experience, consistently average results, and of course a man, a Dartmouth graduate, just like Garrett. Bradley still needs me to fix his reports. Before they're submitted," Abby said, unable to completely mask the shock and indignation in her voice. "He has growth potential, and he's great with clients. He's got that, that natural charisma you just can't teach." Charisma. Code for confident white man who fits the image clients expect to see. Abby took a deep breath, regaining her composure. "I see. Well, thank you for your consideration." She stood, collecting her untouched folder of meticulously compiled evidence. "May I ask what you suggest for my own professional development considering your assessment?" Garrett seemed relieved to return to familiar territory. "Keep up the great work, Abby. Maybe take on a few more challenging clients. In time, who knows?" In time. The phrase competent women heard on loop while watching mediocre men leapfrog ahead of them. Abby nodded professionally, muttered some automatic thank you, and walked to the door with perfectly controlled posture. Only once she reached the relative safety of the women's restroom did she let the mask drop, her hands trembling with rage as she gripped the edge of the sink. 5 years. Countless unpaid overtime hours, personal sacrifices, undeniable results. All to be told she didn't have the profile, because women supposedly don't thrive in leadership roles. Her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. How did it go? Looking at herself in the mirror, Abby saw past the immediate anger to something deeper. Crystal clear resolve. Garrett Woodson had made a mistake. Not just a moral or ethical one, but a strategic one he would come to regret. She typed back, "Exactly. As we expected. Bradley got it, but this isn't over." Not over, indeed. It was just beginning. Digital journal entry, Abigail Russo. October 17th, 9:33 p.m. 3 days since the incident. Yes, capital letters in my head. Observations so far. 1. Bradley has already canceled 2 meetings with major clients because he doesn't feel ready. 2. Garrett asked me to assist Bradley during the transition. Translation: do his job while he gets the title and salary. 3. Trevor from HR suggested I be patient and keep proving my worth. Because 5 years of top results apparently weren't enough. What is wrong with this place? And why am I still here? He said that? Literally those words? Abby and Marcus were sitting at a cafe 3 blocks from Pinnacle, a neutral zone where they could speak freely. She had just recounted her disastrous meeting with Trevor Collins, the head of human resources. Direct quote, "Garrett has an excellent track record of identifying talent, Abby. Maybe it's a timing issue. Just keep showing your value." She took a sip of her now lukewarm latte. As if the problem is me not having shown enough value. Marcus shook his head, frustration. Evident. At 36, with 10 years in the industry and an MBA from Wharton, he knew exactly what it was like to be constantly underestimated for reasons that had nothing to do with ability. "You should file something formal," he suggested. Garrett basically admitted to gender discrimination. Technically, he said he didn't see women thriving in that role. Imagine the defense. He didn't mean all women, just me. Abby sighed. Trevor's clearly not going to lift a finger, and Boston's a small town in the finance world. If I become that woman who sues her employer, I'm done. "So, what's the plan?" Marcus asked. "Because you always have a plan." Abby hesitated. The options she had considered over the past 72 hours came down to 3. Stick it out and wait for another internal opportunity, probably pointless. Look for a new job, starting from scratch in a potentially similar culture. Or leave the financial sector entirely, wasting years of hard-earned experience. Honestly, I don't know. The admission stung, especially for someone used to always having the next step mapped out. Part of me wants to throw 5 years of flawless analysis in Garrett's face. Another part just wants to walk away. "And what? Does your best part want?" Marcus pressed, his eyes holding more confidence in Abby than she felt in herself at the moment. She paused, brushing away an imaginary grain of sugar from the spotless table, an automatic gesture of tidiness her coworkers often teased as her analyst neurosis. "The best part of me wants to prove him wrong. Not just about me, but about every woman he's dismissed over the years." Marcus smiled. "That's the Abby I know. But how? I'm not going to make that happen at Pinnacle. Not with Garrett, standing in the way and the entire culture working against me." "Maybe it doesn't have to be at Pinnacle," Marcus suggested, leaning in. "There are other companies. Better companies." Abby nodded absently. Of course there were other companies, but Boston's finance sector was notoriously homogenous. Same dynamics, different logos. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a calendar notification. Meeting with the Peterson client in 20 minutes. A meeting that should have been led by Bradley, but he had delegated it while settling into his new responsibilities. "I have to go," she said, finishing her coffee. "Bradley's too busy with his shiny new position to handle, actual work." "Classic," Marcus muttered. "Hey, I have an idea. Horizon Financial is hosting a networking event Thursday night. A buddy from Wharton works there and invited me. Want to come?" Horizon? Abby frowned, recalling what she knew about the company. Younger, growing, known for an unconventional approach. Not exactly the same vibe as Pinnacle. "Exactly," Marcus grinned. "And I heard their VP, Vanessa Chen, will be there. She's been making waves in the industry." The name rang a faint bell. An executive whose reputation for innovation and strong leadership had begun echoing even through the more traditional halls of Pinnacle. "Why not?" Abby shrugged. "Can't hurt to network, and it'd be nice to be in a room where I'm not the only woman or person of color." Back at Pinnacle, the day dragged in a slow-motion exercise of professional patience. Abby led the Peterson meeting flawlessly, as always, only for Bradley to show up in the final 5 minutes, take credit for the analysis, and get invited to play golf by the client. Yet another boys' club moment she was categorically excluded from. Later that afternoon, a company-wide email circulated. The official announcement of Bradley's promotion, written by Garrett. listing his achievements, several of which Abby had accomplished under his nominal supervision. Looking out from the 35th floor window, Abby took in Boston's skyline, corporate towers lined up like perfectly spaced dominoes. For 5 years, she had played by the rules, believed in meritocracy, trusted that excellent results would eventually outweigh systemic bias. Now she knew she needed new rules. The Horizon Financial Group networking event took place in a sleek space in Cambridge, across the river. The difference between this setting and Pinnacle was immediately striking. Instead of dark wood and founder portraits, the space featured glass walls, contemporary art, and a level of diversity among the attendees that made Pinnacle feel like a relic from another era. "Impressive, isn't it?" Marcus said as they grabbed drinks from the bar. "Feels like we're on another planet. Or at least another century," Abby murmured, noticing clusters of diverse professionals deep in conversation, including several women clearly in senior roles. "Marcus, Kelly, you came!" An Asian American woman in an elegant red outfit approached, embracing Marcus with genuine familiarity. "Vanessa, thanks for the invitation. This is Abby Russo, a colleague from Pinnacle and the best financial analyst in Boston." Abby extended her hand, but Vanessa Chen surprised her with a casual hug. "I've heard about you. Roberts from Eastlake Capital mentioned a brilliant analysis you did for their portfolio." "Oh, thank you," Abby replied, genuinely surprised that her work was known outside of Pinnacle. "It was a challenging project, but a rewarding one. That's exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need more of in the industry," Vanessa said with evident authenticity. "The old model is crumbling, but few have the courage to admit it." The conversation flowed naturally, with Vanessa showing genuine interest in Abby's work, not just the results, but also her methodology and perspective. No talk about golf, no references to outdated traditions, no constant pressure of being the only woman trying to prove her worth. After about 40 minutes of substantial conversation, Vanessa looked at Abby with an evaluative intensity. "So what's your next move at Pinnacle? Management, I hope?" The question struck a nerve. For a moment, Abby considered giving a diplomatic answer, the kind of vague response expected in professional conversations. But something about Vanessa's openness inspired honesty. "Actually, I was just passed over for a promotion. Apparently, women don't have a leadership profile, according to my boss." Vanessa raised her eyebrows, her expression hardening briefly. "Let me guess, Garrett Woodson?" "You know him?" Abby asked, surprised. "Boston is small in our world, and Garrett has a reputation." Vanessa took a sip of her drink, choosing her next words carefully. "Mind if I'm blunt? Please. Pinnacle is a dinosaur. They survive off old relationships and a loyal client base that doesn't want to change. But the market is evolving, and they're going to fall behind." Vanessa paused. "Talents like you and Marcus are being wasted there." "It's a good name to have on the resume," Abby replied automatically, repeating the mantra she'd used to justify 5 years of frustration. "No doubt, but names on a resume don't build revolutionary careers." Vanessa leaned in closer. "We're restructuring our financial analysis department at Horizon. We need someone who can implement innovative systems and lead the team to superior results. Someone with your exact experience and vision." Abby blinked, momentarily speechless. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm suggesting a formal conversation," Vanessa corrected with a smile. "But yes, we're actively looking for a director of financial analysis, 2 levels above the role you were denied at Pinnacle." The world seemed to slow down. 2 levels above. A real leadership role, not just middle management. "That sounds interesting," Abby replied, trying to maintain professionalism despite the sudden rush of adrenaline. "Great." Vanessa pulled a sleek card from her pocket. "Come in for a formal interview next week, and bring those innovative ideas that Pinnacle clearly doesn't appreciate." As Vanessa walked off to greet other guests, Marcus reappeared beside Abby. "What was that about?" Abby looked at the card in her hand, then at Marcus. "I think I just found my next move." A small smile began to form on her lips, the first genuine one since that devastating interview with Garrett. Digital journal entry, Abby Russo. October 30th, 10:15 p.m. Interview with Horizon tomorrow. I prepared a presentation that incorporates all the ideas Garrett rejected over the last 3 years. Systems that could have saved Pinnacle millions. Part of me feels like I'm betraying the company, but another part, the one that stayed up. Countless nights perfecting analyses Bradley took credit for, thinks they had their chance. 5 years of it. I'm nervous, but also free, like I can finally breathe fully. Marcus says I'm glowing. Tomorrow I find out if it's true. The offices of Horizon Financial in Cambridge perfectly reflected their corporate philosophy. While Pinnacle occupied a century-old skyscraper with dim interiors seemingly designed to intimidate, Horizon operated out of a sleek modern building with a glass facade that allowed natural light to flood every space. Abby arrived 20 minutes early for her scheduled interview, wearing a teal-blue suit she had bought specifically for the occasion. Professional, yet distinctly feminine, without trying to blend into a male-dominated environment. Vanessa greeted her personally at the front desk. Abby, punctual as a Swiss watch. Come on, I'll give you a quick tour before we start formally. The office tour revealed a radically different environment from what Abby was used to. Open and collaborative workspaces blended with private rooms for meetings and focused work. Analysts from diverse backgrounds collaborated on projects, and Abby noticed something even more surprising. About half the team were women. Our philosophy is simple, Vanessa explained as they walked. Cognitive diversity leads to better financial decisions. We can't serve a diverse market with a room full of people who all think the same. That's refreshing, Abby said, taking in the vibrant energy of the office. At Pinnacle, innovation is basically a forbidden word. And that's why Pinnacle is losing market share to companies like ours, Vanessa replied with a knowing smile. But enough about the competition. Let's head to the conference room. Diana's eager to meet you. Diana? Abby asked, surprised. Diana Reynolds will be in my interview? Vanessa nodded. Our CEO likes to be involved in hiring for senior positions, and after reviewing your resume and recommendations, she insisted on being there. Abby's nerves, temporarily forgotten during the tour, came flooding back. Diana Reynolds was a legend in the financial sector, one of the few female CEOs of major investment firms, known for turning Horizon from a promising startup into a powerhouse in just 8 years. The conference room had a glass wall overlooking the Charles River. Diana Reynolds was already seated at the table, reviewing documents. At 55, she radiated the quiet confidence that comes from undeniable competence, not positional authority. Abigail Russo. Diana stood up, extending her hand with a firm handshake. I've heard impressive things about you. It's an honor to meet you, Ms. Reynolds, Abby replied, struggling to keep her composure. Diana, please, and the honor is mine. It's not every day we get to interview someone who increased the return on investment from their analyses by 34% over 5 years. Abby blinked, surprised. You reviewed my results? Of course, Diana smiled. At Horizon, we value data over hierarchy, and your data is exceptional. The interview that followed was unlike any Abby had ever experienced. Instead of generic questions or stress test traps, Diana and Vanessa asked substantive questions about analytical methodology, team management, and her vision for the future of the industry. When it came time for Abby to present her proposal for restructuring the analytics department, she braced for resistance. Years at Pinnacle had conditioned her to expect it. Instead, she was met with genuine interest and insightful questions that deepened her ideas rather than dismissed them. This cross-evaluation system you're proposing, Diana noted, studying one of the slides. If implemented correctly, it could reduce analytical errors by at least 20% and increase processing speed by almost 30%, Abby added, feeling more confident by the minute. I tried to implement something similar at Pinnacle, but let me guess. Vanessa jumped in with a wry smile. Institutional resistance? To put it mildly, Abby agreed. The exact response was, we're not changing systems that have worked for decades. Diana shook her head. The mantra of those destined to become obsolete. She closed the folder containing Abby's resume. Well, I think I've seen enough. Abby felt a knot in her stomach. Already? The interview had only lasted an hour, and she still had more points to present. Had she made a mistake? Vanessa and I have another meeting in 10 minutes, Diana continued. But before we go, I'd like to make something clear. She looked directly at Abby, her expression serious. The position we're filling is critical to our growth plans. The Director of Financial Analysis will report directly to me and will have substantial autonomy to implement new systems and rebuild the team. Abby nodded, trying not to show her disappointment. Of course, a position that important would require more than just one interview. But I also believe in efficient decisions, Diana went on. And to me, it's quite clear that you're exactly what we're looking for. Abby froze. Excuse me? I'm offering you the position, Diana clarified, a small smile appearing. Full package, which Vanessa will go over with you in detail, assuming you're interested, of course. Yes, I'm absolutely interested, Abby replied, her professional composure momentarily slipping. This is an incredible opportunity. For us as well, Diana said, rising to her feet. Talent like yours is rare, Abby, and even rarer are leaders willing to challenge conventions when needed, she paused. Pinnacle is making a monumental mistake by underestimating you. After Diana left, Vanessa stayed behind to go over practical details. Salary, significantly higher than at Pinnacle. Benefits, expectations, and start date. Normally we'd ask for a month's notice, Vanessa concluded. But we'd understand if you'd prefer to leave Pinnacle sooner, given the circumstances. Abby considered her response carefully. I want to do this professionally. 2 weeks' notice, organized transition. I don't want to leave my current team hanging. Vanessa nodded in approval. Exactly the kind of integrity we were hoping for. She smiled. And it confirms we're making the right choice. As she walked out of Horizon's building, Abby felt a whirlwind of emotions. Excitement for the new challenge, pride in being valued, and a hint of melancholy about leaving. A company she'd invested 5 years of her life in. Her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. How did it go? She replied with a single sentence. Director of Financial Analysis, Horizon Financial Group. 3 dots popped up immediately, followed by, Holy Mother of God, dinner tonight, you're paying with your new director's salary. Abby smiled, slipping her phone into her pocket. For the first time in weeks, she felt light. Abby's resignation letter was a model of professionalism. 2 impeccably formatted pages communicating her decision to pursue a new opportunity, expressing gratitude for the experiences she had gained, and offering full support during the transition. What she didn't mention, where she was going, what position she had accepted, or how Garrett's behavior had influenced her decision. Trevor Collins, the HR director, looked surprised during the exit meeting. This is unexpected, Abby. I thought after our conversation you'd understand. That patience would eventually be rewarded. I appreciate your perspective, Trevor, but I've decided it's time for new challenges, she replied with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Garrett will be disappointed. He always considered you a key part of the team. Fundamental, but not leadership material, Abby observed, keeping her tone neutral despite the flicker of satisfaction at seeing Trevor squirm. I believe 2 weeks is sufficient for a transition? Yes, of course, Trevor agreed quickly. But I'm sure Garrett would like to speak with you in person. Maybe we could discuss counter-offers. Abby raised an eyebrow. I think he already made his opinion about my potential quite clear. News of her resignation spread quickly across the 35th floor. Coworkers stopped by her desk, expressing surprise and curiosity about her next move. To every question, Abby vaguely mentioned new opportunities, never revealing where she was headed. Marcus found her in the copy room at the end of the day, closing the door behind him. The whole floor's speculating about where you're going, he said quietly, and Garrett is panicking. Good, Abby replied simply. He called me to ask if I knew. I think he's worried you went to a direct competitor. And what did you say? That I had no idea, but any company would be lucky to have you. Marcus smiled. He called 3 recruiters today. Abby couldn't help but smile. It's a start. During her final week, Abby worked diligently to document all her processes, train colleagues who would take over her responsibilities, and ensure a smooth transition. Her unwavering professionalism only highlighted the contrast with Garrett's discriminatory decision. On the afternoon of her last day, as she emptied her desk, Garrett finally appeared. He looked uneasy, wavering between irritation and a forced attempt at casualness. "So, you're really leaving?" he began, leaning against the divider of her workstation. "Yes," Abby replied simply, placing family photos into a box. "It's a shame. You're an excellent analyst." Abby nodded, refusing to take the bait. The silence stretched, forcing Garrett to fill it. "Can I ask where you're going? Maybe we can talk about a counteroffer. Trevor mentioned you didn't want to discuss details." Abby looked him straight in the eye for the first time. "I'd rather not share that at the moment." "Is it one of our competitors?" Garrett pressed, his tone tightening. "Because you know we have non-compete clauses, which only apply to senior-level executives, not analysts," Abby finished. "As you yourself pointed out, I'm just an analyst, not leadership material." The blow landed. Garrett flushed slightly. "Abby, I think you misunderstood my evaluation. I just thought Bradley had a profile more suited for that specific role. It wasn't a statement about your overall career potential." "I see," Abby replied, closing her box. "Well, I hope the choice was the right one. How's Bradley doing with the Williams portfolio?" Garrett hesitated. The Williams portfolio was a difficult client that Abby had managed flawlessly for years. "There have been some adjustments." "I imagine so." Abby extended her hand. "I wish you and the team the best, Garrett. I've learned a lot here." Thrown off by her composure, Garrett shook her hand automatically. "If you change your mind?" "I won't," she replied with a small but confident smile. "But I appreciate the concern." As Abby walked out of Pinnacle's building for the last time, she didn't look back. Her 5-year journey hadn't ended in bitterness, but in renewed determination. Garrett Woodson had just made the biggest mistake of his career, and he didn't even know it yet. Digital Journal Entry, Abby Russo. November 15th, 11:05 p.m. First week as Director of Financial Analysis complete. Differences from Pinnacle. 1. My opinion is not only heard but actively sought out. 2. I implemented 3 systems Garrett dismissed as unnecessarily innovative. 3. I hired 2 brilliant analysts that Pinnacle rejected for not fitting the culture. Read, a black woman and an Asian man. 4. Diana invited me to the executive committee, saying she needs my disruptive perspective. Still processing all of it. I feel like I'm breathing pure oxygen after years underwater. "I disagree," Abby stated firmly, pointing to the projections on the conference room screen. "These estimates are overly conservative. We're ignoring 3 emerging trends that will completely shift market behavior next quarter." It was her 3rd week at Horizon, and Abby was in the middle of a strategy meeting with the senior team. In her previous position at Pinnacle, she would have kept that opinion to herself, or timidly presented it as something to consider. Here, she was directly voicing her disagreement to Diana Reynolds and the entire executive team. Instead of the rejection she had learned to expect at Pinnacle, Diana leaned forward, genuinely intrigued. "Please explain. What trends are we overlooking?" Over the next 15 minutes, Abby laid out her alternative analysis. The room stayed engaged, asking substantive questions that deepened the discussion rather than challenged her authority. "Fascinating approach," Diana concluded when Abby finished. "Let's incorporate this perspective into our projections." "Great work, Abby." Later in the hallway, Vanessa caught up to Abby. "You're really standing out. I'm still getting used to not having to fight to be heard," Abby admitted as they walked together. "At Pinnacle, questioning the traditional approach was practically heresy. And that's exactly why Pinnacle is losing ground." Vanessa paused. "Speaking of which, I've heard some interesting rumors." "What kind of rumors?" "Apparently, since you left, 3 of the division's biggest clients have raised concerns. Their replacement for you isn't exactly meeting expectations." Abby couldn't help a small smile. "Let me guess. Williams' portfolio?" among others. And it looks like your former boss is desperately trying to find out where you went. He's called 5 different firms asking if you joined them. Seriously? Abby stopped, genuinely surprised. Vanessa nodded. Boston's too small. For secrets, Abby. He even offered a substantial bonus to rehire you. The irony wasn't lost on her. A little too late, don't you think? Way too late. Vanessa smiled mysteriously. Especially considering our plans for next quarter. What? Plans? Abby asked, intrigued. Vanessa glanced down the empty hallway before continuing in a low voice. Diana's going to announce it at the all-hands meeting tomorrow, but I'll give you a heads up. We're launching an aggressive expansion strategy. Part of it includes acquiring traditional firms that have underestimated market shifts. Acquisitions. I can't confirm names just yet, Vanessa replied with an enigmatic smile. But let's just say that certain companies that dismiss talent based on gender rather than merit have become attractive acquisition targets. Abby's heart raced. Pinnacle? Vanessa simply raised her eyebrows suggestively. The meeting's at 10 a.m., be on time. The news hit Boston's financial world like a bombshell. Horizon Financial Group had acquired a controlling stake in Pinnacle Investments as part of its aggressive expansion strategy. Diana Reynolds would become the new chair of the board, with full authority to restructure all operations. On the 35th floor of Pinnacle, the panic was palpable. Veteran executives whispered nervously about their futures, while younger analysts frantically updated their resumes. Marcus called Abby minutes after the official announcement. Did you know about this? He asked, his voice a mix of shock and awe. I found out yesterday, she admitted. It's surreal. This place is in complete chaos. Garrett is practically catatonic. Apparently he met with Diana this morning and, whatever happened, he came back looking like a ghost. Abby felt a brief pang of satisfaction, quickly followed by a deeper sense of purpose. This wasn't about petty revenge, it was about transformation. How are you doing? She asked Marcus. This affects you too. Honestly, hopeful for the first time in years. Horizon has a reputation for valuing diversity and promoting based on merit. Maybe I finally have a real shot here. About that? Abby hesitated. I have a meeting with Diana in half an hour. I might have some news soon. Diana's office in the Horizon building overlooked the river and the Boston skyline, including, ironically, the Pinnacle building in the distance. Abby, come in! Diana gestured toward the chair in front of her. I imagine you're still processing the news. It's quite a surprise, Abby admitted, taking a seat. Only for you, Diana replied with a smile. We've been monitoring Pinnacle for months. A solid company with great assets but severely mismanaged and stuck in the past. When you joined us and shared your experiences there, it only confirmed what we already suspected. Abby nodded slowly. And now? Now comes the fun. Part restructuring. Diana opened a folder on her tablet. Since you know the operation intimately, I need your insight on the necessary changes, starting with your old division. Over the next hour, Abby meticulously outlined the structural problems in Pinnacle's analytics division, outdated processes, biased performance reviews, missed opportunities for innovation. Diana listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. I agree with your assessment, she finally said. The division needs entirely new leadership, someone who knows its problems intimately, but also has the vision to transform it. Abby felt a slight tingle of apprehension. That sounds like a significant challenge. It is. Diana closed the tablet and looked directly at Abby. That's why I want you to take over the division. As Garrett Woodson's direct supervisor. Abby blinked, momentarily speechless. Excuse me? I'm appointing you as executive supervisor of Pinnacle's financial analytics division, reporting directly to me. Garrett will remain as senior manager for now, reporting to you. Diana offered, a slight smile at Abby's expression. Poetic, isn't it? Abby paused, gathering her thoughts. Wouldn't it be simpler just to replace him? Eventually, maybe. But first, I want to see if he can learn and adapt under the right leadership. Diana leaned forward. Besides, there's something powerful in showing him, and the entire organization, that the kind of discrimination you faced has no place in the modern financial world. Abby considered the implications. Becoming Garrett Woodson's boss would be undeniable proof of his poor judgment. But it would also be a monumental challenge, navigating resentment, resistance, and the need to maintain professional integrity. This isn't about revenge, Abby, Diana added, as if reading her thoughts. It's about real meritocracy. You're the most qualified person for this role, regardless of the past. After a moment of reflection, Abby nodded. When do I start? Monday, Diana replied. And I have one more request. That colleague you mentioned? Marcus Kelly, Abby finished. Exactly. Based on your recommendation and our own research, we'd like to offer him the position of Strategy and Innovation Manager, reporting directly to you, of course. A genuine smile spread across Abby's face. He's going to be thrilled. Excellent. Diana closed the folder. Oh, and one last thing. Garrett doesn't know yet. I want you present when I give him the news tomorrow. Digital Journal Entry by Abby Russo. December 1st, 11:35 p.m. First day as Garrett's supervisor. Initial meeting. He looked physically ill when I walked into the room with Diana. When she announced my position, he nearly spilled his coffee. Is this some kind of joke? He asked. Diana simply replied, the joke would be ignoring the best talent available due to outdated biases. The day was surreal. Half the team looked relieved, the other half confused. Bradley avoided eye contact all day. And when Garrett tried to call me Abby during the general meeting, I politely corrected him. Ms. Russo, please, in a professional setting. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. The conference room on the 35th floor of Pinnacle was unrecognizable, not physically, but in its energy. The same executives occupied their usual seats, but the air of complacent confidence had been replaced with a palpable anxiety about the future under new leadership. Abby walked in alongside Diana, both impeccably dressed and exuding the quiet confidence that comes from undeniable competence. Garrett was already seated, his expression a mix of confusion and apprehension. Good morning, everyone, Diana began as soon as the room settled. As you know, Horizon's acquisition of Pinnacle represents an opportunity for modernization and growth. Today, I want to introduce the person who will oversee the transformation of the financial analysis division. Garrett straightened his tie, automatically assuming Diana was about to confirm him in his role. After all, he'd managed the division for 8 years. Abigail Russo will take over as executive supervisor of the division, effective immediately. The silence that followed was absolute. Eyes widened. A few executives exchanged incredulous looks, and Garrett looked like he'd been physically struck. Abby, he finally said, his voice a blend of shock and indignation. Our analyst? Director of Financial Analysis at Horizon for the past month, actually, Diana gently corrected. And now, Executive Supervisor of the Unified Pinnacle Horizon Division. Is this some kind of joke? Garrett asked, unable to hide his discomfort. Diana looked at him with icy composure. The joke would be ignoring the best talent available. Due to outdated prejudices, Mr. Woodson, Ms. Russo brings precisely the vision and leadership we need at this crucial moment. Abby maintained a professional expression, but couldn't help noticing the range of reactions across the room, from subtle smiles on the faces of colleagues who had witnessed her being sidelined for years, to looks of outright dismay from the old guard. Ms. Russo will now share her vision for the division and outline the initial changes, Diana continued. Afterwards, she'll hold one-on-one meetings with each team leader to discuss expectations. Abby stepped to the front of the room, opening her presentation on the system. It was the same system she had proposed to Pinnacle 2 years ago, rejected by Garrett as unnecessarily complex, now implemented company-wide. Thank you, Diana. Abby addressed the room with the poise of someone finally stepping into the role she was meant for. As many of you know, I spent 5 years in this division. I know its strengths, and more importantly, its untapped opportunities. Over the next 20 minutes, she presented a comprehensive vision for transforming the division, from new analytical systems to shifts in performance evaluation culture. Every point was backed by solid data, every proposal grounded in rigorous analysis. Even the most skeptical attendees couldn't deny the strength of her presentation. Everyone except Garrett, who remained tense, hands clenched on the table, clearly struggling to process how his former subordinate, the woman he had overlooked for promotion, was now his supervisor. Any questions? Abby concluded after outlining the implementation timeline. What exactly will my role be in this new structure? Garrett asked, trying to keep a neutral tone, though his voice betrayed his tension. You'll continue as senior manager, Mr. Woodson, Abby replied professionally. Your experience is valuable. However, your focus will shift toward supporting new initiatives rather than maintaining legacy systems. The subtext was clear: adapt or become obsolete. After the meeting, while the other executives left, many stopping to congratulate Abby, Garrett remained seated, clearly waiting to speak with her in private. Diana noticed the situation. I'll be in the main office if you need me, she said to Abby in a low voice before exiting, leaving the two alone. Garrett stood, adjusting his suit like a man preparing for battle. Impressive move, Abby. Ms. Russo, please. Let's keep it professional, she corrected calmly. And it wasn't a move. It was a natural progression based on merit, the very concept you claimed to value when you denied me a promotion 2 months ago. He let out a humorless laugh. So, that's what this is about? Revenge? No, Mr. Woodson. This is about business. Horizon recognized my value and leadership skills, the same ones you insisted women didn't possess. Abby gathered her documents with deliberate calm. But if you're worried about revenge, let me assure you that my leadership will be based solely on merit and results, not gender, not personal connections, and certainly not outdated biases. Garrett looked torn between indignation and genuine concern about his future. And what if I don't agree with this structure? Then you're free to seek opportunities elsewhere. But think carefully. Finance is changing, Mr. Woodson. Companies that embrace diversity and innovation are consistently outperforming those clinging to the past. Before he could respond, Abby walked toward the door, but paused at the entrance. Our first one-on-one meeting will be tomorrow at 9 a.m. Bring your evaluation of the current systems and ideas for improvements. I value diverse perspectives, even ones I don't agree with. She looked him straight in the eyes. After all, real leadership doesn't fear being challenged. The irony of throwing back at him the very expectations he had imposed on her for years wasn't lost on either of them. In the weeks that followed, Abby led a methodical transformation of the division. The outdated systems Garrett had long defended were gradually replaced by more efficient approaches. The evaluation culture was restructured to focus on measurable outcomes instead of subjective impressions. And perhaps most significantly, a new promotion policy based entirely on merit was implemented. Her first major decision, promoting Marcus Kelly to manager of strategy and innovation, a role Garrett had refused to even consider him for 3 times over the past 5 years. Thivoye, team's really responding to you, Vanessa commented during a lunch 6 weeks after the transition. Even the more resistant ones are starting to see the results. Most of them, Abby agreed. Garrett still pushes back on every change at first, though I've noticed he's beginning to adjust his approach. And what's it like? Working with him, given the history? Abby paused to reflect. Professionally challenging but oddly satisfying. There's something powerful about leading by example, about being exactly the kind of leader he assumed a woman couldn't be. And Bradley? The guy who got your promotion? A small smile crossed Abby's lips. I assigned him to work directly with Zara Johnson, the brilliant analyst I hired from NYU, who just so happens to be a black woman with zero tolerance for mediocrity. Education through experience. Diabolical, Vanessa laughed. But fair. Exactly. It's not about tearing him down. It's about raising him to the standard that should have been expected all along. The next afternoon, Abby found an unexpected document on her desk, a detailed proposal for a new predictive analysis system, thoroughly researched and professionally presented. The name on the cover surprised her. Garrett Woodson. She called him into her office, the same one he had occupied just months earlier. "Your proposal," she began as he walked in, "is quite impressive." Garrett looked momentarily surprised by the compliment. "Thank you. Particularly the section on behavioral market analysis. I didn't know you had an interest in that approach. I recently researched the topic," he admitted, "after you implemented the new trend tracking system." Abby nodded, studying him. This was a different Garrett from the arrogant man who had dismissed her ideas for years. Still confident, but the arrogance had been replaced by something closer to reluctant respect. "I'm approving a pilot project," she decided. "You'll lead it, with weekly reports. I'll assign Zara and Marcus to support you." Something flickered across his face, a brief hesitation that, months ago, Abby might have interpreted as resistance to working under women or people of color. Today, she recognized it as something different, the discomfort of someone confronting their own unconscious biases. "They're excellent analysts," Garrett finally said. "Good choice." As he left, Abby allowed herself a moment of reflection. The transformation wasn't just about systems or profits. It was about people, including those like Garrett, who needed to unlearn deeply rooted prejudices. The real victory wouldn't be to humiliate him, but to transform him. And with him, the culture that had enabled institutional discrimination for so long. Digital Journal Entry, Abigail Russo. February 15th, 9:07 p.m. 3 months as supervisor. The results speak for themselves. Division productivity up 31%, employee turnover down 40%, and customer satisfaction at its highest level in 5 years. Garrett's pilot project was surprisingly successful. I have to admit he's genuinely trying to adapt. Today, the most meaningful moment. He advocated for Zara's promotion to senior analyst against objections from other veteran managers. "Her results are undeniable," he argued, "and she has exactly the kind of leadership vision we need." His exact words from months ago, now applied to a young Black woman. Maybe people really can change. The board meeting is tomorrow. The moment of truth. The executive boardroom in the Horizon building was set for the most important event of the quarter. The financial results presentation and update on the Pinnacle Horizon integration. All top executives and the board of directors were present, including several former Pinnacle executives who had stayed on after the acquisition. Diana opened the session with an overview of the strong overall metrics, then turned to what many considered the biggest success story of the merger. And now, to update us on the transformation of the financial analysis division, our executive supervisor, Abigail Russo. Abby stood confidently, her slides ready. 3 months of meticulous work had produced results that exceeded even her most optimistic projections. Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to share the outcomes of our transformation over the past 3 months. For 20 minutes, she laid out hard data: a 31% increase in productivity, a 40% drop in employee turnover, the highest customer satisfaction ratings in 5 years, and a revenue growth forecast that surpassed all previous estimates. These results aren't just numbers, she explained nearing the end. They represent a fundamental cultural shift. By implementing systems based on true merit, removing unconscious bias from evaluations, and fostering an environment where cognitive diversity is valued, we unlocked potential that had been systematically overlooked. As she finished, a spontaneous round of applause broke out, a rarity in typically reserved board meetings. Several board members nodded in approval, clearly impressed. Diana took the floor again. Outstanding work, Abby. Any questions for our executive supervisor before we move on? One of the veteran directors, a man who had initially expressed skepticism about the proposed changes, raised his hand. These results are impressive, but are they sustainable? Are we seeing a temporary boost from the novelty factor, or a true structural change? An excellent question, Abby replied. Allow me to show our projections for the next 3 quarters, based on current trend metrics and predictive analysis. She presented another set of charts, demonstrating how the positive trends were accelerating, not slowing down. In addition, we've implemented continuous feedback systems that allow us to make real-time adjustments, not just quarterly. We believe the results are not only sustainable, but will continue to improve as the cultural transformation deepens. The director nodded, visibly pleased with the response. Diana scanned the room. Any other questions? To the surprise of many, Garrett Woodson raised his hand. As the former senior manager of the division and now part of the new leadership structure, he had been invited to the meeting, though he typically remained silent in these forums. Mr. Woodson? Diana gave him the floor. Garrett shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with all eyes on him. I'd like to add something to Ms. Russo's presentation, if I may. Diana and Abby exchanged a quick, curious glance. Please, go ahead, Diana replied. Garrett stood. The data presented is undeniable, but there's an element of the transformation that may not be fully captured in the metrics. He paused, visibly, searching for the right words. The most significant change I've observed has been in the decision-making culture. Under the previous leadership, he hesitated briefly. My previous leadership, the division operated under certain assumptions about who could perform certain roles. The room fell completely silent. Everyone there knew the history between Abby and Garrett, though it was rarely spoken of openly. Ms. Russo implemented a system where genuine merit is the sole standard of evaluation, he continued. As a result, we've identified and promoted talent that had previously been overlooked. He looked directly at Abby. Including by me. A murmur rippled through the room. This was the closest thing to a public admission of bias anyone there had ever witnessed from a senior executive. I believe the exceptional results we're seeing are not in spite of this new approach, but because of it, Garrett concluded. And that's a valuable lesson for all of us in leadership positions. He sat down, his face slightly flushed, but his gaze steady. Diana, ever skilled in navigating delicate moments, nodded in acknowledgement. Thank you for that perspective, Mr. Woodson. It's precisely that capacity for growth and adaptability that we value in our unified culture. After the meeting, as attendees dispersed, Abby found herself alone with Garrett in the hallway. That was unexpected, she said, unable to fully hide her surprise. Garrett looked at her directly. It was necessary and true. He paused. I misjudged you, Abby. Ms. Russo. A mistake rooted in biases I didn't even realize I had until they were directly challenged. Recognition is the first step, she replied, keeping her tone professional, though she couldn't help a note of genuine appreciation. It was more than that, Garrett admitted. Working with Zara, Marcus, and the other talents you've brought forward, I've realized how many opportunities I've missed over the years because of my limited filters. He adjusted his tie uncomfortably. I don't expect this to change. The past. But I wanted you to know that I'm genuinely committed to this new direction. Abby studied her former boss, now subordinate, with a new perspective. The transformation wasn't just in the division or the systems, it was also within the people running them. Thank you, Garrett. That means a lot. She extended her hand professionally. I hope to keep building on what we started. As they shook hands, Abby realized her victory wasn't about becoming superior to Garrett, but about creating an environment where both she and he could be their best professional selves, where talent, not gender or other irrelevant factors, determined success. 1 year later. Digital journal entry, Abby Russo. January 15th. Orientation day for our new mentorship program. 25 young professionals from diverse backgrounds, all ready to challenge the financial industry's status quo. Marcus is leading the strategy module, Zara the advanced analytics one, and even Garrett is participating as a mentor. Who would have thought? Diana announced today my promotion to Executive Vice President of Horizon Pinnacle, effective next month. When I think about where I was 2 years ago, unbelievable. It's not just about the title or personal validation, but about creating spaces where talent can thrive without artificial barriers. I think that's what true leadership really means. The Horizon Building's conference hall had been transformed for the inaugural mentorship program reception. Banners with the new Horizon Pinnacle branding decorated the walls, and 25 young professionals, mostly women and people of color, chatted excitedly with their assigned mentors. Abby watched the scene with quiet satisfaction as she made a few last tweaks to her opening remarks. Marcus, now director of strategy after his rapid rise under the new merit-based structure, approached with 2 glasses of champagne. "To the architect of it all," he said, handing her a glass. Abby smiled as she accepted it. "To all of us. This was a team effort." "An effort you made possible," he insisted. 2 years ago, half these people wouldn't have even gotten interviews, let alone executive mentorship." Abby scanned the room. Zara, now a senior manager, guiding a group of junior analysts, Diana chatting with new managers, and surprisingly, Garrett diligently explaining advanced financial concepts to 2 young women listening intently. "People can change," she noted, following his gaze. "Some," Marcus agreed, when faced with undeniable evidence and outstanding leadership. Across the room, Eleanor Woodson, Garrett's wife, slipped in quietly. Abby had met her a few months earlier at a charity event and discovered something surprising. Inspired by her husband's transformation at work, Eleanor had decided to return to the professional path she had abandoned years before. Abby crossed the room to greet her. "Eleanor, I'm so glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it for the world," Eleanor replied warmly. "I wanted to see this program Garrett keeps raving about." "He's been a surprisingly committed supporter," Abby admitted. Eleanor smiled knowingly. "Not so surprising. You fundamentally changed how he sees things, leadership, potential." She paused. "Much more than he'd ever admit publicly." Before Abby could respond, Diana stepped up to the podium, signaling the start of the ceremony. "Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Horizon Pinnacle Executive Mentorship Program." She paused, smiling at the room. "Before I hand things over to the visionary behind this program, I'd like to make a special announcement. It is with great pleasure that I announce the promotion of Abigail Russo to Executive Vice President of Horizon Pinnacle, effective next month." Applause erupted spontaneously. Abby, genuinely surprised by the early public announcement, felt a flush of pride as she stepped up to the podium. "Thank you, Diana, for that trust." She looked around the room, diverse, bright, hopeful faces. "And thank you all for being here tonight. This program isn't just about professional development. It's about redefining what it means to lead in modern finance." As she spoke of vision, merit, and transformation, Abby couldn't help but reflect on her own journey. Those fateful words from Garrett. "Women don't have leadership potential," now felt not only wrong, but almost laughable in their short-sightedness. "The true test of leadership," she concluded, "is not how high you rise, but how many people you lift along the way. It's about creating environments where excellence thrives, regardless of gender, race, or background. It's about recognizing that diversity of perspective isn't just morally right, it's strategically essential." After finishing her speech and as the night wore on, Abby found a quiet moment by the window, gazing out at the Boston skyline. Her mind drifted back to the Pinnacle conference room 2 years earlier, where a man had tried to define her limits based on outdated prejudices. "A penny for your thoughts." Garrett had approached quietly, keeping a respectful professional distance. "Just reflecting on unexpected journeys," she replied. He nodded, understanding. "Congratulations on the promotion, fully deserved." "Thank you, Garrett." "You know," he began hesitantly, "I often wonder what might have happened if I had seen in you back then what everyone so clearly sees now." Abby considered the question. "Honestly, it would have been easier for me, no doubt. But—" She paused, glancing toward the young professionals in the mentorship program. "Maybe we wouldn't be here, creating space for all this talent." "A generous perspective," he observed. "Realistic," she corrected. "Sometimes the biggest catalysts for systemic change are the very obstacles we encounter along the way." Diana approached, joining the conversation. "Exactly the kind of mindset that makes you an exceptional leader, Abby." She smiled. "And the reason we're all here celebrating tonight?" As the celebration continued around her, Abby realized that her true victory wasn't simply proving Garrett wrong about her. It was turning that moment of discrimination into a force for positive change, not just for herself, but for dozens of others who would now have opportunities that had once been denied. Her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "Proud of you. Boss, you changed the game for all of us." Abby smiled. She hadn't just shattered a glass ceiling, she had opened a path for others to follow, transforming an entire system in the process. And that, she realized, was the most powerful legacy she could have built.